Welcome to Rainbows Are Circles, a podcast exploring human potential and everyday wonder. What possibilities open up for us when we explore life with optimism, curiosity, and an open mind? Join me, Julie Malari, as we wake up to wonder and speak with inspirational guests on the topics of personal development, alternative health, and even magical, mystical, yet often misunderstood practices. Are you ready? Greetings, friends. Today we're diving back into the fascinating world of astrology. As we discussed in episode number 5, astrology is the study of the relationship between the planetary bodies, so the sun, moon, and planets, and their influence on us human beings. In order to understand how the planetary bodies are influencing you personally, it's important to look at your natal chart or your birth chart, which reveals where the planetary bodies were in the sky at the time of your birth. When we spoke with Eileen Mello in episode number 5, we talked about how astrology can help us to understand ourselves better and how the planets can provide guidance to us as we move through our life journey here on Earth. In this episode, we'll build on that knowledge of astrology with Michele de la Menardiere, an incredibly talented Bay Area artist and designer who has also been passionately studying astrology and reading charts ever since she was a young girl. In this episode, we'll explore the nitty-gritty of astrology, and we will learn: how do you read a horoscope or astrological chart? What are the characteristics of the 12 astrological signs? And what are the elemental qualities of the different signs? What is the trifecta, and how does it provide a more complete understanding of your astrology, as opposed to just looking at your sun sign, which is what you might find in a newspaper horoscope? How does knowledge of astrology help us appreciate the differences in people and have more compassion for ourselves and others? Lastly, after we've learned all of this, Michele will guide us through a mystery celebrity person's chart, and we'll get to guess who it is based on the information from the chart. Let's wake up to cosmic wonder. Are you ready? So let's start just by learning a little bit about yourself and how you got interested in the subject of astrology.
So I think from a very early age, I was very interested in all kinds of esoteric traditions and the paranormal, and I was using a Ouija board when I was very young, and I was just so interested in like the unseen worlds. Like unseen worlds were of much more interest to me than the regular world, for sure. And then I think somebody gave me a book on palmistry, and I became really fascinated with that, the study of that, and that led to an interest in numerology, which actually was my foray into astrology, because in numerology you are dealing with birth dates. From these numbers, there's this idea of what kind of personality type you will have. And at the same time, I was already interested in tarot, so I was kind of like just sort of curious and open and just really intrigued by these systems and understanding on a deeper level like where my personality was coming from, because I think there was always this just sort of knowing that there's a depth there that I'm not aware of. And I honestly cannot even tell you how it went from being a casual thing to like sort of like an obsessive hobby. I don't know when the jump occurred, but it was sometime like in my 20s, I just became more and more and more like fascinated by it.
How would you describe astrology to somebody who is completely new?
Yeah, it's a fascinating question, and I think over time the definition has become more nuanced, because originally it was something like, well, I don't know, there are these patterns, there seem to be these patterns happening, and I was doing all my research and I was seeing that they were working, and I didn't know why. But over time I have come through various studies of trying to understand consciousness and the various different planes of our existence. The way I see it is that, we are physical, but we also have like an astral plane. We have a plane of consciousness, and that plane is influenced by the state of the planets at the time when we're born. So astrology is the study of those patterns at that moment of time and how those patterns affected our consciousness, and it creates a certain blueprint that we're walking around with. Now, if you ask 20 astrologers, they're going to give you 20 different understandings of what it is. Mm-hmm. But in my mind, it's one of the many aspects of our consciousness. We can study it to have a larger understanding of who we are.
Okay, so you mentioned that astrology and the way that the sky lines up at the time we're born creates a sort of blueprint for our lives. Mm-hmm. Does that mean that we have a destiny when we're born, or does it just mean that we may encounter certain things or have certain personalities or characteristics about us depending on how the planets influence us?
That's a really deep question, and it's like the fate or destiny question.
Right.
And I don't really have a good answer to that, because I feel like my life is like a study of that one question. And I do think the study of astrology, the deeper you go, it keeps bringing up that question. And personally, I think there is a level of free will that we feel we have free will, so therefore we do. But whether or not there's a grander destiny that we're living within, I don't know if that makes any sense. Like, there's so many layers to that. Mm-hmm. It's just a big mystery.
So I spoke with an astrologer, Eileen Mello, on a previous podcast, and we learned a really good foundation of astrology. Mm-hmm. And in this podcast, I'd like to go into a little bit more detail about the different signs.
Okay.
And how to read a chart, mm-hmm. and also like what the different houses in the chart are. So first of all, when somebody gets their chart read, what exactly is happening?
The chart is basically a snapshot of the sky at the moment you were born. You look straight up at the sky and see this sort of stage. So the houses are like the parts of the stage. They don't move. And then the planets, they're moving, right? And then that very second you're born, the photo is taken, and then they're going to be falling into these different houses. And the placement of the planets in the houses is what defines these personality patterns, per se, that make up this fundamental blueprint of who you are. So they're reading this blueprint, which can change, and you're not stuck in any traps. It's just in my opinion, it's what you've come in here to work with. Some might say like a karmic agenda. These are the things you're here to do in this life, to learn from and transcend.
So there are 12 houses?
12 houses.
And what do the different houses mean?
So it's just basically a circle, and it's divided into 12 different parts. That's the sky. You're looking up there, and it's sectioned off into these 12 sections, and they basically represent all aspects of your personality. So if we go around, the first house represents your ego, your sense of self. The second house represents the material world, your values. The third house represents communication, and sort of like short travel, your life like right in your inner sanctum. The fourth house represents like the sense of home, the sense of emotional like sustenance. The fifth house represents self-expression, like your creative drive in some ways. The sixth house represents habits, how you take care of your body. It has to do with your, like the way you work, these kind of more day-to-day habitual patterns. The seventh house represents relationships and often marriage and partners. The eighth house represents, well, they call it the house of sex, death, and taxes. It's like all about the deep sort of secret sides of yourself. Okay. The ninth house represents travel, philosophy, teaching, learning, that kind of growth. The 10th house represents like ambition, success, whereas the 6th house is more like what you do in the office. The 10th house is like who you become from your job, your ambition, you know. The 11th house has to do with friendships. It has to do with large groups and how you could be directing them in some way. And then the 12th house is your spiritual destiny, and it also has to do with, a lot of it has to do with like the things you are unconscious of. Astrology is, it's very dualistic in a sense. Like you have these houses and there's good and bad things about them, you know. So they say you have like a lower and a higher octave to the house. I mean, I'll explain this more later, but, and just like a sign would have a lower and higher octave, like, I'm a Libra. Like the higher octave of Libra is like very harmonious, diplomat, you know, artist. The lower octave is like neurotic, indecisive, and like, you know, can't function because they're paralyzed with indecision or trying to please others. So that's just something that's part of the nature of astrology.
When you talk about the signs, so those are the signs that one might come across if they're reading their horoscope in like a newspaper or something. So how many signs are there?
There's 12 signs.
There's 12 signs. Okay. Talk a little bit about the different signs.
Okay, we should preface this by saying that, you know, the tendency these days is for people to read these newspaper things and think that that's like, they're just reading about the sun sign, and then they think that that's what astrology is. When really, what I have to emphasize over and over again is that you really need to look at the trifecta being the sun, the moon, and the ascendant. These are the three most important points. The ascendant is, so the sun was rising over this point in the chart at your time of birth, and it's that exact point is called the ascendant. And, you know, there are plenty of computer programs out there that will show people this, so you don't have to think about it too much. You can figure out what your ascendant is. But these 3 points are the most important when you are looking at a chart. You cannot just read about being one sign and without knowing the other two things. You're never going to have an accurate picture of who the person is.
Okay.
So I just want to start by saying that the sun represents your basic nature, who you are consciously, which you just don't even think about. You just move through the world like that. Your moon is your subconscious, and it has to do with your deep emotional drives that you may or may not be aware of. And it has a big impact. Some might say, a bigger impact than the sun. I mean, in fact, we won't go into this because it's a whole other world, but in India, they have Vedic astrology, which in Vedic astrology, the moon actually has all the importance. The sun is like third down. It's not even second down. It's because it goes moon, ascendant, sun. So it's totally different. They put all the emphasis on there. So, you know, different viewpoints, but at the end of the day, to me, the moon is equally as important. The ascendant, and it's a little confusing, but it's sort of like the face you put on over your sun that and how you actively are moving around through the world. The sun is how you think, the ascendant is how you look, and the moon is how you feel. And it's a dance we all play. It just depends how harmonious or disharmonious those three things are. If they're disharmonious, there could be more of like, when you meet someone and you're super surprised when you get to know them, or there's something you just didn't expect to find out, this sort of whole other side of them. A lot of the times those are people with a more disharmonious trifecta, whereas like, other people, they're just the same, because they could have a very harmonious mix.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So when you say harmonious, does that mean that their sun sign and their ascendant signs are the same?
You have groupings of signs in different elements. So for example, there's 4 elements. So you have the fire signs, the water signs, the air signs, the earth signs. Okay. And then you have like the signs that fall within each. Well, generally speaking, fire and air get along very well. Earth and water get along very well.
Okay.
When you start mixing the elements, you get more of like a complex. There could be more of like a surprise, a surprise element. If you meet somebody and they have this mix of like fire and water, because if you think about it, you just think about it. I mean, fire and water, they don't really go together very well.
Right.
Water puts out fire.
Yeah, they cancel each other out.
What does air do? Air makes the fire grow. So you look at these things, and that's kind of how air people tend to like inspire fire. I mean, they inspire the fire people to act, right? Water, they can often be like a lot of heavy emotions. It's too much. The fire, they're just trying to move through their day. Air and water, they're just like confused because they don't do, there's just like a confusion there. Water helps the earth grow. So earth people really enjoy the energy of the water people. Fire overwhelms earth. It's just putting, earth can't handle all that energy. Again, air and earth, that's another kind of, cause you and I were both air signs. So it's this sort of funny kind of thing with that. But yeah, so it's really interesting to see. You just get so into it and you begin to understand all these dynamics at play.
That's so interesting. Because in Chinese medicine too, they talk about the elements and how the different elements affect each other. And I think even metal is one of their elements.
I think so many misunderstandings would be solved on this planet if people understood who they were elementally and just accepted that about themselves and realized there are these other elements out there walking around. They're very different. And to try to understand that, like how they could be, moving through the world. Because, I mean, we're making big generalizations, but time and time again, I've seen this to be true. Mm-hmm. And by the way, I just want to say, like, there is kind of a science to how you figure out what your element is. I mean, it's basically mathematical. You look at your chart, you figure out like how many planets are in what element, and and then there's an importance. Some planets are more important than others, and you kind of just do the math and figure out like what you lean towards. So it's not going to necessarily be your sun sign, right? It's going to be like the whole feel of the chart.
What you said about how if we all just tried to understand each other a little bit more from an elemental standpoint, I think that's really important because we all see the world differently and we all interact differently. We all have different dreams and goals. Mm-hmm. And if we have a lot of water element, we see the world and we act in the world very differently than what I guess a fire element person would do.
I would say so.
If we can just understand that we're all different and it also has to do with those elements and how they affect us, then I think we would just be more understanding and more harmonious with each other in general.
That's the whole purpose behind why I study astrology. The whole reason why I kept going with it, because I realized that, first of all, it helped me understand who I was. Because I've had a lot of therapy, I've done a lot of work, but it's something about the breakdown of astrology and really understanding on that level who I was. It was very transformative. So it helped me there. But then also I began to really understand people. My compassion, I feel like I evolved. My sensitivity, ability to really accept others just grew like so much through the study of astrology, because it taught me about people in a way where I think I was just walking around thinking, what a weirdo. Right. But then I could really, really see, and not just see, but deeply appreciate the vibrant, high energy of some of these fire signs, and like the extreme depth and empathy of like water signs, and, or like the tenacity and steadfastness of certain earth signs. And you begin to like just see it all around you and just sort of become mesmerized by the way it plays out in the world, and just be so like impressed at this sort of, we're just this huge spider web, but we're all connected. So just seeing these parts of ourselves play out, it's just phenomenal. And I certainly don't understand it. What is going on the deepest level? I won't even pretend to know the deep magic of why this is working, but I can tell you from like 20 years of analyzing charts that something is going on. I will guarantee you that something is happening. I'm just constantly learning from it.
What has knowing your chart and knowing your astrology taught you about yourself, or helped you to accept about yourself?
Oh my God, so much. I had really suffered a lot just generally in my growing up. I mean, I really had a lot of like depression and anxiety. I had a lot of issues. And there were a lot of external reasons for that, but I had a lot of like self-blame. I started to see my chart, and I realized that because the chart can show you circumstances that you could potentially be born into. And so I did begin to see two things. I began to see a lot of the suffering that I've been born into, and it was just healing for me to see that and to understand that this is a pattern, and it's something that I can come through. Then on another level, I saw an enormous amount of energy and power. And I think when I was young, I didn't know how to handle that power. And it was very explosive, and it was just completely out of control. And I started to study that power that in my chart, and I learned that it could be very explosive and out of control. And then I learned what to do with it and how it could be used for good. And I learned that it's like a sort of power that can flip back and forth. It has to do with Pluto, and I could do a whole podcast on Pluto. And learning about Pluto and the power of this planet and what it can do, I mean, it allowed me to forgive myself and to just take all the guilt off, and these feelings of like unworthiness and pain were removed, because I began to see that like, oh, maybe I was born with this pattern and it was here to teach me something, and I can like shift this. Because like I was saying earlier about things being higher octave, lower octave, you can shift it. And actually the people who do have some of the most difficult and painful charts are the ones that can do the most good, because they have the deepest sensitivity for that. So they can really help people in many ways. And, so that's what I hope to do in some form, in the future, is to just be some kind of an astrotherapist.
Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. I think you just came up with a new
But then they think I was like on another planet, astrotherapist. I don't think that's, but I feel like very driven to help people. with this.
Right.
And I also want them to know that you're not like locked down by a chart. You're not locked down by anything in your birth chart. It's here is like, this is the structure. Now what are you going to do with it? I mean, you can raise the whole thing and like start over if you want, but learn the structure, learn the blueprint. Here it is. And then, just learn the tools to sort of work with this. That's what I want to help people with, It's just incredible.
Yeah.
It really is.
Well, I can definitely see your passion for it. I mean, the fact that you just study this on your own all the time and you do charts for people and...
Yeah, I mean, I did take a few classes, but the thing is, when you've done as much self-study as I have, it's hard because, the classes end up being too simple, or it's just you're at a weird level because you've been doing it in this non-linear way. So did do some formal training after like 10 or 15 years of self-study.
You mentioned that astrology really helped you to understand yourself better. I actually had a reading from a man named Prasanan who does a different form of...
I know Prasanan.
You do?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
He does Vedic.
Yeah.
He does Vedic.
Different style of astrology. Yeah.
That's so funny. No, I went to see him in Berkeley.
So I did a reading with him, and then I did a reading with you and also Eileen Mello. And I learned so much about myself in those three consultations. And, I think the most valuable thing that I learned was just understanding that I am the way that I am for a reason, and it's not anything that I should beat myself up about.
Yes.
So,
for sure.
For example, like I've always been very curious. Like I'm always taking new classes or reading new books or wanting to travel somewhere different. I can be very scattered. And in the consultations I received, you all saw that in my chart. And you also saw that that was natural for me, the way that my sun is in Gemini and my moon is in Sagittarius and the way some other things lined up in my chart. And it wasn't like anything was wrong with me. It was just, this is the way that I would expect to be based on how the planets were aligned when I was born.
Right.
And for me, that was really reassuring because sometimes I beat myself up about being too scattered and not being super focused on any one thing. But I've also realized that maybe that could be a strength. Like maybe I don't need to master and go really deep into one subject, but I can somehow find a way to satisfy my curiosity and learn about all of these different things and not feel like I'm forcing myself to just do one thing. And that's actually what I've been doing with this podcast is I'm able to talk to all of these different people and learn about all of these different topics that I'm super interested in. And that can be of great value to all of the listeners who are also learning right along with me.
I think it's wonderful that you learned like all these strengths. And I mean, take a cue from Russell Brand, your fellow, you know who that is? Okay. I'll tell you later. He's your fellow Gemini.
Oh, tell me about him now.
Oh my God. He's a huge like podcaster with like his brain is electric. I mean, it's like on fire. Like he is so fast-witted. Like he is like Gemini manifested. He has so much knowledge running through him. And it's obvious that his whole like essence of being, he's here to just be sharing that and making these podcasts. And I mean, he is so Gemini. So I'm just saying like, yes, there's a beautiful and amazing things about all signs. And yes, we are, that's what I was saying. Like my own personal study just helped me really just learn how to like appreciate everybody's special and unique traits, you know?
Yeah.
We're all like, we've all got them for sure, you know?
Right. And how can we learn about them in ourselves and also just honor them instead of trying to make ourselves be like somebody else or wish that we were a different way?
It's like making peace with these aspects of ourselves.
Right.
Exactly. But also like, I think the word isn't change as much as move from that lower octave to higher octave. When you see something challenging, like how can you take it? There's a nugget of gold in everything that looks challenging in the chart. How can you bring that out? I think, you know, this is psychotherapy. This is the art of psychotherapy. You can use your chart to do that. That's what I did. That's what I do for myself all the time. I mean, I still go back to my chart. I mean, I've looked at it like how many hundreds of times, but I still sort of go back to it and sort of consider it all the time, you know?
Yeah. And how can we, like, knowing our tendencies and knowing our chart, I guess having that information, how can we also use that to work through areas of difficulty? Like, for example, for myself, being very kind of all over the place and scattered, yes, it is an element of myself, and I can accept that about myself and also learn to work with it. And I can also learn how to integrate some more discipline into my life and practices of grounding, like you mentioned earlier during our consultation, so that I can be a little bit more in my body and a little bit more like focused.
I mean, it's really only here to assist you. So it's not like you need to change anything. But I think the point is, if you see something and it's causing you yourself, if you yourself are irritated by that scatteredness, then in a gentle way, kind of think of ways to work through it. But it's not so much like this is like a negative trait. It's not like that. It's not like that, because that scattered quality on a higher octave means that you do have this breadth of knowledge and you bring that extensive exposure to so many topics to the conversations and connections you have. And we need that energy, you know.
That actually reminds me of something that Aileen told me in the consultation. And she was kind of like, you know, some people are meant to really specialize in one area. And some people are meant to be more specialized in generalization. I feel like that's kind of more what I naturally do. Like, I just want to learn about these different things. And that's sort of my specialty, is learning about all these different things and then kind of finding connections between them. And
totally, because there is no right and wrong way to be necessary. You know, that's not the point. It's not to say like, oh, you're so far off track from this ideal human. No, the point is we're all these lovely, amazing aspects of consciousness. And isn't it amazing that we're all here together bringing forth these different characteristics? You know, that's what I find so fascinating.
Can you give us the general characteristics of the 12 different signs?
Well, I can. I just want to make sure that people realize the trifecta. We start with Aries, and, you know, it's the first sign. So it's the one that comes in and it just wants to, like, it wants to get things started, and it's not afraid, and it's dynamic, and it's independent, and it's just like up for the challenge. And it's that, you know, no matter if that person is the president of the United States or like, you know, just doing a simple job, they bring that kind of energy. So this is the interesting thing, because people, I think they want to see the outer manifestation of it, but sometimes it's just in the personality. So you could be quiet, but still have that sort of, and doing something very simple, but still have that independent, strong nature about you, you know. So then we move into Taurus, which is a much more grounded, earthy, practical, stubborn personality type. You know, is very much like has a way that they want to do things, and they're very habitual about it. You know, they're considered to be like a sensual sign, very much in the body. You know, they're very much about making life comfortable on the material level.
Would that be an earth sign?
Yeah, that's an earth sign.
Okay. And Aries is an air sign, a fire sign?
Aries is a fire sign.
Okay.
Then we come to Gemini, which is the first air sign. And Gemini is all about the realm of communication and ideas. And it's also considered to be the twin. So there is something of a dualistic personality. So these are the great communicators. You know, these are the people that are the fast thinkers, they're coming up with ideas. They're like the comedian, like there's so many amazing like Gemini comedians because they think so fast. They're able to like put things together mentally, like at this speedy rate. So we're in the air realm now. So we're talking about the mental realm, you know?
Okay.
Then we move to Cancer, water sign Cancer, and we move into the emotional realm. This is the first sign of water. It's deep, it's emotional, it's very much about home, it's very much about small communities. I mean, it's really amazing. You really do flip so dramatically when you go from Gemini to Cancer. And if you know a Cancer and you know a Gemini, you will know the difference usually, unless they have a lot of other things going on in their chart. But so you have someone who's very sensitive. You know, the sign is the crab, so they're very soft and sensitive, but they put on an exterior like nothing's wrong. But deep inside, things could be wrong. And you
very wrong.
Probably don't know if you're not a sensitive water sign. The chances are high you have no idea you hurt their feelings. It can be very difficult for an air sign to understand that, you know. Then we move to Leo. Leo is a fire sign. And Leo is the king, the lion. It's all about, you know, showing up. And I mean, Leo, you know, unfairly or fairly gets associated with narcissism, selfish behavior. The truth is, they want to shine. I've really never met a Leo who didn't want to shine. But to be nice and fair, they want everyone else to shine with them.
Sweet.
They really do. If you're on their good side, they want you to shine, and they will fill you with compliments, and they will try to shine that light on you. You know, now, but they're very sensitive, and if you hurt them, they'll go to their den, their lion's den. They don't want to talk to you anymore.
You're in trouble.
Well,
You're in big trouble.
That's it. They'll cut you out because they don't waste time like with, you know, Leos. They're very much about pride and looking a certain way and just doing everything kind of with dignity. They want to do everything with dignity. And so the more sort of ruffled, kind of messy, emotional signs, they just don't have time for that nonsense.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Then we come to Virgo. Virgo, again, unfairly or maybe fairly, often gets associated with just sort of being nitpicky and critical. And it's also the virtuous virgin. And so Virgo is very much about order and like sort of a way that they like to do things. They're very material oriented, material based. You know, they like to talk about the concrete matters. Again, remember, trifecta. So other things can be going on, right? But generally speaking, unlike the air signs they live in the world of ideas and abstract concepts. Virgo lives in the world of like, I did this at 12. I'm going to do this. I'm going to buy this. I'm going to go here. I mean, they kind of are like that. They're very like, they have this sort of way.
Is that an earth sign?
That's an earth sign.
Okay. So
Yeah.
very practical.
Very practical.
Linear.
Incredibly generous and service oriented.
Mm-hmm.
They will give and give and give to a fault. They tend to be very modest, humble people. They're kind of like the people that are like worrying and can be like overly critical of themselves. Then we move to Libra. Libra, they're like just trying to be a diplomat, like even in their own head. And it can get kind of like the game of like weighing life to get the perfect balance and harmony. It actually doesn't exist. There is no perfect balance and harmony. But it's sort of a quest. It's a Libra quest. They're very concerned with like harmony and fairness. Again, they're very interested in like, they're an air sign. So it's all about, they're interested in like the ideals, like on a idea kind of abstract concept level and these ideas. But they can have a tendency to be like way too concerned with the other and making sure that there's like harmony with the other. So it can cause a kind of something that looks like they're being fake, but really they're not being fake. They're just sort of trying to make sure everything goes all right together. So that's a dance that the Libra plays.
It sounds a bit difficult to do that, to make sure everything's going okay. Do they tend to have
We have
stress
a lot of
around
anxiety.
Okay.
Yes, totally.
Okay. It seems like
anxiety is like hardcore for Libras. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And Libra is air.
Yeah. Most Libras I know with like a lot of Libra, they have anxiety issues. Yeah. The balance is kind of impossible. And see the thing, it's not even like you can change that about yourself. Even if you know, you're like, balance is impossible. There's no such thing. But then you still are.
You're still trying to make it happen.
Yeah. Libras are, but they're like hard workers into the arts, all these good things. Then we go to Sagittarius, Scorpio, there's so many things like people think about Scorpios. But, they tend to be, and by the way, when we go from sign to sign, we see like that dramatic shift. So we move from like the person who wants to please everybody to the person who doesn't care at all what anybody thinks and is just doing their own. Because Scorpios want to go deep. They have no interest in pleasing everybody. They want to know things on a deep level. They want to understand truth. They have deep feelings regarding things. They are very passionate. They are very like driven to succeed and accomplish. So in terms of the water signs, they're probably the most like driven in that sense. But they have all this like intensity and feeling behind them. Mm-hmm. So they get associated a lot with more like the darker side. They're considered like one of the most sexual signs because of like the depth that they want to explore. In general, everything kind of boils down to this kind of like depth. So, yeah. And they're kind of like the blunt ones that don't want to bullshit. Then we move to Sagittarius. So we're going deep and then we're coming up into like the philosophical realms. The Sagittarians, they are the ones with all these grand plans and sort of large like notions of life. They are totally nomadic, like in terms of the way they are so independent. They don't want to be tied down. They want to be free. They want to do their own thing. They often have like strong views that nobody's gonna change, but these are also like kind of the people that are just floating through life, like, like going off on these big, like backpacking adventurous type of trips. They're just exploring the world, in their many ways, but, they can get a bit fanatical, like when they're focused on things, and they have a tendency to also like, be very blunt with people and not always care about being as sensitive because they're more interested in truth than they are anything else. So that just becomes their like driving motivation. Okay. So then we come to Capricorn, which is every sign in each element has a different flavor. And so Capricorn as a earth sign is the most ambitious one. So the other earth signs are more about the day-to-day, like, they might be out like literally tilling the earth and Capricorns might do that too, but they're often more concerned about like their entire career or how they're going to, like, they're ambitious. They're ambitious about what they're going to do in the world, how they're going to fulfill the goal. So, it's sort of a larger scope. So they tend to be, Capricorns are often found in like, managerial or C-level roles in company, like like managing large groups of people. They're known to be like super calm under pressure, like very no nonsense. They have a reputation for like not being very feeling, but that's not true because they just don't express everything. They actually do have a lot of feeling. They just don't express it. They don't understand like the need for this like elaborate display of emotion that other people have. And so they get, especially the women, they get like sort of sometimes people don't read them correctly. Like they think they're ice queens, but it's just that they don't actually have the need to be as emotionally worked up often as other signs, So, they often have like super dry sense of humor and are very, very caring and really want to help people in many ways, They're just much more practical about it, which can be soothing and comforting for some people, because sometimes words are empty, and Capricorns know that words are empty if there's no action behind it.
Right.
They really, really know that. So then you move to, what do we have now? We have Aquarius. Aquarians are considered like the unique kind of, they're marching to the beat of their own drummer. They're the final air sign. They're considered probably the most detached air sign, out of Gemini, Libra. And they're the ones that are more like so lost in their ideas that they can be like disconnected. Actually, San Francisco, Silicon Valley is considered like Aquarian central because Aquarians are known for being like, so air, so ideas, invention, futuristic, like new thought, new ways of being. So much of that is like Bay Area. When we actually in the like new age spiritual worlds, that's true, but also in tech. So this is like kind of a hotbed of like Aquarian energy of just like, how can we change the world? But it's not known for being a sign that is like super emotionally in tuned. Like it would be rare really to find an Aquarian who was really comfortable, like going deep and expressing vulnerable emotions. It's not something that, what comes naturally to an Aquarian would be like to analyze the emotions, to kind of sit back and sort of look at it from a distance, but to feel it, to sit with it, not so much, it's not like a natural thing, Aquarians there's so many here. They're all over the place because they tend to be non-conventional. They don't want to live like by the rules. They want to be free. They want to be super curious. I mean, all air signs are curious. Probably Aquarians and Gemini more than Libra, but all air signs are curious for sure. Okay, and then we move to Pisces. Pisces, the slippery ones, they're actually considered the ones that are like the hardest to pin down. Well, because they're symbolized by those fish, one's going down, one's going up. They are really considered to be the hardest personality to pin down. Some signs, no pun intended, but some signals of, the stereotypes are like, often the emotions are, so it's a water sign. But unlike the crab who hides the emotions, and I guess both the Scorpio and the crab are kind of hiding their emotions, the Pisces can be like floodgates open. They can be, I normally see this with female Pisces. I have seen it with male Pisces too. It's true. Actually, they will show it all. Like they will show it all. To the extent that you just have no idea how to deal with it. If you're not, like, it can be that kind of waterfall of feeling is coming out. On the plus side, they're considered, actually, because they're at the end, they're considered the most psychic and the most in touch with like other realms of consciousness. Now, a lot of Pisces have no interest in that, but generally speaking, they're the most in touch with it. The funny thing is there are a lot of Pisces that are coders. And one of the theory behind that is like they like to go into other worlds. So the world could be a shamanic journey, or the world could be code, or it could be like fantasy books, or it could be like porn. I mean, it doesn't really matter what the world is. The point is they like to go into other worlds.
Okay.
They like to just get lost, because Pisces is the sign, because it's at the end, it wants to merge. It wants to dissolve. It dissolve itself. That sounds so incredibly deep and intense, but it actually, a lot of the way that Piscean lives play out is like they cannot handle any kind of structure or control. So like they're often the friend that's like, they're like 2 hours late. You're like, I don't know. They're like, not all, right?
Is she coming?
Or suddenly, they're like, I'm moving, I'm moving to Burma, and you didn't even have a clue that, because they don't want to ever be pinned down. They don't ever want to be pinned down. And, but then there are Pisces that actually try to control themselves, and you'll find them like suddenly, like they're the CEO of a company, and you're wondering. And my theory on that is that sometimes they're afraid of that side of them. So they try to create a boundary around it.
Okay.
But generally speaking, Pisces are super empathetic. They're very connected to the human suffering. And some Pisces, they use that and they know what to do with it. Others, they can become addicts, or because they just can't handle the pain because it's so on top of them all the time, the water sign energy, But, there's, like Kurt Cobain, that's like he's a stereotypical Pisces,
Was he a Pisces?
Yes. Yeah.
So was his sun sign a Pisces, or his moon, or his ascendant?
So his moon and ascendant, I think. He had like more than one thing. So often, but not always, but often, because your Mercury, Mars, and Venus will be in your sun sign because they're so close to the sun. So at the moment they're the closest planets to the sun. So they're often the same sign as your sun sign. Mm-hmm. Am I confusing you?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All the planets fall into, they're somewhere in the sky.
Let's go back to basics.
They fall somewhere in the chart. Like
okay, the 9 planets,
anywhere, right?
There's 9 planets.
But often, right. So this is a chart, and they're falling in the sky, right? This is the picture. There's the sun, right? Often you will find that the Venus, Mercury, and Mars is not the case in this one. They're often very close to the sun, meaning that they're often in the same sign, which emphasizes the sign.
Okay.
Making the person more like the sign.
More of that sign.
Yeah. That's why often you could be a lot like your sun sign if you had all those planets there. Like I am. Mm-hmm. I have a whole bunch of planets in Libra. And my ascendant. So then I become like super Libra.
Okay. So we have the sun, the moon, and the ascendant. So if somebody's moon sign is a Gemini, what might you expect? Or let's pick a different sign. Well,
that's fine. We can do Gemini.
Okay. Let's say if somebody's moon sign is a Gemini, what might you expect that person to be like?
Okay. I happen to know a bunch.
Oh, okay.
And I'll explain why, because there's a theory behind that. But, so, a Gemini sun walks around curious and looking for things. So the Gemini moon also has that sort of childlike curiosity and wonder, but it might not be apparent on the surface so much. It's just like something quiet that they kind of know about themselves. And it could come out, for example, that they don't want to commit because, see, your moon is your emotions, okay? And let's just take the situation of like committing to another person. That requires giving up a lot of other like
options.
But not just options so much as like the childlike wonder. I've seen this with so many Gemini moons, so it's fascinating to me. They don't realize it, but they're like, if I press them and I'm like, it seems like there's this childlike wonder that you don't want to be like locked in. And then they're like, yeah, of course. Totally. But see, that is Gemini moon in action because it's taking that kind of thing that's very conscious in a Gemini, but it's something that's happening on an emotional level, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It also means that because Gemini is an air sign, okay, that is very interested in all these things. The moon, the nature of the emotions will be reflected by the signs. So what I mean by that is that emotionally, the fulfillment will come from the curiosity and exposure to all these different things. That is where the emotions find fulfillment, which is very different than, like, let's say your moon is in Cancer and you really find fulfillment by just being with someone all the time. I don't know what you're doing. You're like, you're locked in.
You're cuddling all the time.
Yeah. And you're kind of just doing, it's the home life. And it's not so much about the curious exploration. Mm-hmm. So the Gemini in the moon brings a sense of curiosity and a need for that in terms of emotional fulfillment.
What if your moon was, let's say, Aries? Mm-hmm. What might you expect from somebody with an Aries?
So the Aries they're moving, independent, just strong, wanting to do things on their own. So again, if that becomes your emotional nature, that's what you need to feel fulfilled. You don't want to be at all tied down. And it's, again, a lot of times these people can't put words to it because it's the deeper internal sense of fulfillment. A lot of Aries moons honestly tend to be a bit restless because that is an energy that is, if you think of the moon as being this sort of like the deep, calm, inner nature, and then Aries is like bursting forth. It can bring a sudden sense of like needing to like get going and get things done. Aries moon don't like to sit around and talk deeply about their feelings. Normally, that wouldn't be something that they would like to do. They want to just jump up and get on with things.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. And if your Aries let's say your ascendant was an Aries, that would affect a different part of your being and personality.
Your ascendant is in Aries.
Mine is?
Yeah.
Okay, so what is
it? Gives a flavor. A flavor. It's like the wardrobe. It's like the outfit you're wearing on top of who you are. So you're walking around as a Gemini. The costume is one of energetic independence and direction. So I mean, that's a good combo. So fire and air, that's a good combo. They go together well. So air adds energy to fire. So you're just it gives you an added zest and sort of enthusiasm and sort of a direction. Kind of like I would say, it definitely would give you the ability to quickly like change directions and do something real fast,
Oh, okay. Interesting. So you had a mystery chart.
I do have a mystery chart, yes.
Okay, so you have a chart of someone, a mystery person, and you are going to read us the elements of the chart and we get to guess who it is. Yeah?
Yes. It's just to give an idea of how it works, it will be slightly tricky without the visual. I'm looking at a chart now, and it's of a very famous person. And in this chart, we see the Sun, Venus, and Mercury in the second house, which the second house is, and they're in Aquarius. And the second house is all about, it's often a sign of like money, possessions, material value in the world, you know. So when we see this chart, we immediately think, okay, this person, they were here to do something with that in their life, to create something in the world. Second house is not an abstract house. It's a concrete house of like, you're making something happen in the world. Venus, there always is a sign of like money coming in. So that's always good. This person is an Aquarian. So that brings that level of uniqueness and sort of, broad-minded, future-oriented thinking, like somebody who's thinking out of the box. So we're starting there.
With the sun sign is Aquarius, or
They're all actually in Aquarius.
Oh, they're
the
all
Sun,
okay.
Mercury, and Venus. So you have a lot of
okay.
You have a lot of that energy there. The ascendant is in Sagittarius, which is kind of that like go your own way. What I was talking about. Philosophical, frontier, independent thinking. Then we have the moon, which is in Sagittarius in the 11th house. So we have someone that I kind of was alluding to this with Sagittarius, but Sagittarius is all about the big philosophical exploration of life. And it's whenever you see that, that's sort of the quest. The emotional quest is to like uncover that, to understand that. And this is in the 11th house, which is all about large groups of people and perhaps shifting the thought process and the views of large amounts of people. When you find that there's a need to do that. This person also has Mars in Scorpio in the 11th house, meaning you have Mars, which we haven't talked too much about the planets, but Mars, which is like your ability to act. Okay. And it's also again sitting in that 11th house of people and large groups. And it's in Scorpio, which I was saying earlier really wants to go deep. So there's something about the way this person acts that's just affecting large groups of people and going very deep, and it's very focused. So we already see this is someone with a lot of energy who's going to be successful. You know, some of the other things we see in this chart are we have Saturn, which is a bit of a restrictive planet. It's squaring the Sun and Venus. And when we have situations like that, we could say like this person had a lot of hardships. And usually when you see this, the hardships came in childhood, and it's something that the person had to work through. Their Saturn is in the 10th house, meaning that usually it means this person had a certain amount of like work issues earlier in life that they had challenges with that they had to work through. And then we have Pluto, which is a very transformative planet, where Pluto's all about going through suffering and like transforming through it. And it's opposing, this is a lot of information.
No, this is really good, actually.
It's opposing the Sun and Mercury, and where Pluto sits, it actively suggests that there was something very difficult that the person had to go through to change. Okay. And Pluto's in that house of the 8th house, which is the house of, I remember I said, sex, death, and taxes. So whatever it was quite intense and severe. And this person had to like work through it to transform. So we have somebody that is an innovator, someone who is changing the status quo, someone who went through very difficult times, someone who became very, very successful in the material realm and has brought their sort of philosophical understanding to large groups of people.
Okay. So I can guess who it is.
You can guess who it is, Julie.
If this was a male, I would guess it was Tony Robbins because he endured a lot growing up. He grew up in poverty. He grew up with a lot of difficulty and hardship in his life. And now he has overcome a lot of that. He is influencing large groups of people. And he is making a huge impact and making a lot of money. If this was a woman, I would think it was Oprah because she also went through a lot of hardship growing up. I think she was molested when she was young. And she has also been through a lot to get to where she is today. And she's now very successful in influencing large groups of people with her work.
Well, Julie, you have guessed correct.
What?
It is Oprah Winfrey. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's really cool, actually, that you could actually see
Yes, you can
sort of her life in her chart. And actually, I might take a picture of that just to
you might want to
show it.
put it on the. Yeah.
I'm going to send it to Oprah. And I'm going to be like, hey, Oprah, listen to this.
I wonder if she's had her chart read. No, it is really, really, really amazing what you can end up seeing. I mean, I can show you like Obama. I can show you Hillary Clinton. I mean, of course, the presidents are very fascinating. Trump. You know, you can really, really see a lot in these charts.
Have you done Donald Trump's chart?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's done Donald Trump's chart.
What do you see in his chart, just out of curiosity?
There's just no grounding elements. There's
so very airy?
He's a Gemini.
Oh.
He's just not, he doesn't have any stabilizing forces there. You can see in his chart. I mean, I haven't done it's been a while since I've looked at it, but you can see a lot of the financial success.
Okay.
You know.
Right.
But then you just don't see a lot of heart and connection there. So, but you can definitely see why he became, successful.
Right.
So that's the fascinating thing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this has been so fascinating and super informative.
Yes, this was so fun.
If people want to have their charts read or connect with you, how would they be able to get in touch with you?
Email me directly. My email is mdelamen@gmail.com. So it's mdelamen@gmail.com. And we can talk about it.
Awesome.
Set up a consultation. Yeah,
yes.
For sure.
Well, thank you so much. This has been so much fun, and it's really awesome to see you just kind of come alive talking about the stuff that you're so passionate about. So is there anything that you want to share or anything else you want to say before we finish up?
I think I said a lot. We could always do a part 2 or part 3. This has been really wonderful. So
awesome.
Appreciate it.
Boo, 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 boo. You can find references to this episode on the show notes at rainbowsarecircles.com. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's show. If you'd like to subscribe to the podcast so you can get these episodes downloaded as soon as they're available, please hit the subscribe button. You can also leave a rating and review for the podcast, which helps to grow the show and reach even more listeners. An additional way you can support Rainbows Are Circles is by donating $1 a month to the podcast. Every single dollar counts and ensures that Rainbows Are Circles stays alive and kicking. Just visit my Patreon page at patreon.com/rainbowsarecircles. I truly appreciate all of your support, and I hope to see you on the next episode. Until then, have a magical day. Boom, ba boom, boom, ba boom, boom. Bow, 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 bow. Wow, 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 wow. Rainbows are circles.